Thanks, Allison. So thanks, everyone, for coming on today. This is an exciting technique. Early in my career, I had a lot, I still do, what I call impossible cases. How I define an impossible case, and if you guys would say yes or no in your chat bar, if you can relate to this situation where the case that I'm working with is a couple, individual, or family. It's impossible in some ways because they've had 4 or 5 therapists before me that they've defeated soundly. They're up anything is been there, done that, doesn't work. If it's a family, the parents are very, very entrenched in the belief system of just fix my child. Don't even come close to fixing my issues. And they're burnt out. They're stuck. The symptoms that the child or couple or individual have gone from a cold metaphorically to pneumonia. So the system or family that's sitting before you is stuck. So in your chat bar, has anybody ever had these kind of cases on their caseload, which I call impossible? They defeated other therapists, etc. So let me kind of see. Okay, so Rosa Land said yes. Okay, so a lot of people have experienced what I have. Now, the Trauma Playbook, I feel that when you leave today, it will be a game changer that you can use the next day at work. And you're going to see an actual impossible case, 10-year-old Dexter. And it's going to hopefully inspire you to say, you know what, I can use this Trauma Playbook to help turn the impossible to possible. So, and actually there's a part 1, part 2. You're going to see part 1 today, and then next week I'm going to follow up with a webinar that I'll talk more about at the end, where you'll see how the crap hits the fan with the playbook, and it brings up marital dysfunction issues and all kinds of issues. So you have to prepare for these playbooks. They actually will stir up the family, couple, or individual, but in a good way. So with that, let's get started. So thanks for typing in your chat bar where you're from. We have people from all over, and I can't believe it, 600 people registered for this webinar. So I'm honored and privileged to be sharing this information with you. So thank you, guys. So please just relax, turn off the distractions for the next 40 minutes, because we're going through a tough time right now. So much stress out there with the riots that are happening, the racial tensions, the COVID issues. I hope that you'll just relax today. We have something I do with my kids. What are your highs and lows today? So I hope today will be one of the highs. So I will be sending you, or Allison will be sending you, a copy of this PowerPoint today, so you can just relax. Take notes if you want to, but know that these slides will be available to you right after this. And if you miss anything, it's also on demand, so you can also rewatch this. So, okay, with that, so if you haven't met me before, hey, I'm Scott. And I started this Family Trauma Institute about 2 years ago now. And here's the mission, is to help you guys become experts at family trauma. I saw, when I started this quest with my colleague Ellen Souder, that there was tons of stuff for the individual who was traumatized, but not much to bridge the gap to move to the traumatized family, couple, or community. There were generalized principles, but not these kind of step-by-step tools. So I also want you to know that this is going to be today more just an educational webinar, because what you're going to see really works. So where this technique comes from is the results of 10 years of really, I think, really great research of working with families, because they help co-author the book in a way. My research methods is both grounded theory and outcome research. And so this comes from an evidence-based treatment model, PLL. So if you want to see the research, so I know I love research. I'm kind of strange in that way, I guess. But you can go to gopll.com for some of the studies, and you can learn more about the Family Trauma Institute at familytrauma.com. So from this book came 12 core techniques and emerged what's called the Family Systems Trauma Model. Now, if you look up on your screen, the technique that we're going to focus on today is number 10, the Trauma Playbook. We're also going to do a little bit around number 9, which is undercurrents, because the undercurrents actually are the thing that drives the creation of the playbook. So they work together like Forrest Gump says, peas and carrots. So I'll be focused on the playbook, but you have to have the input for the output, and the input's the undercurrent. So these are the 12 core techniques. Now, my promise to you today is this. If I do my job, and we're going to do this together, because at the end, I'm hoping that you'll be writing down questions and posting them in the Q&A bar in real time, and Allison will be collecting them. And in the last about 15 minutes of today, I'll answer as many as I can. But I want you to be thinking critically about this technique. So you're going to learn 2 techniques immediately to use the next day at work. At the Family Trauma Institute, my goal is not just to help you be a family trauma expert, but experiential learning. I'm a big believer that if somebody gives you a technique, you need to see it in action. That's why most of my webinars I think all of them, show real cases using the technique with the ups and downs. So the 2 techniques are undercurrents, or just an overview of that, and the playbook. Now, I'm also going to show you how to integrate this into better online delivery. Ironically, before the COVID-19 pandemic hit, the course that I was working on, which I'll share with you a little bit later, is a 12-week course, and every single case in there for every single technique shows a Zoom call with me being a consultant with a very impossible case. So ironically, you get better when you practice this stuff. So one of the things I'll show you through the video clip is you'll see it's a Zoom call, but there's an art to online delivery. And I think a lot of people are still figuring that out today, that you can't always use more of the traditional talk therapy, but actually telemedicine is a blessing in disguise. So I'm going to share with you how these techniques are integrated into an online environment. The other thing is I'm going to connect the dots of how it's going to unstick the impossible cases that you're working with. Like, what about this technique actually moves an impossible case unstuck? So this is what the goal is, or my promise, and that's why I have a pinky promise today. Okay, so let's go on. So let's go to technique number 1, undercurrent. In the Webster Dictionary, undercurrent is below the surface, unseen to the naked eye oftentimes. It's the underlying influence of what's happening at the surface. And so when in our research in creating the treating the traumatized child, we saw that this was the key DNA, or the secret sauce, of the 11 herbs and spices of KFC, so to speak, metaphorically, where the undercurrent is the root cause that's driving the symptoms, that's driving the trauma. And if you can't get to the undercurrent, you're doing weed work and not root work. And I don't know about you, but as a clinician, I get frustrated if I just pull the weeds and they grow back. And so I made it my life's mission to see if I could help you, the clinician or parent advocate or probation officer or school teacher, whatever role you're in today, how can you know where to tap quickly? So this is what I'm going to show you for this case. Then the playbook. The playbook's really, sometimes the best ideas are the simplest. I'll give you a quick story. At the beginning of my career, I had graduated with an MSW in social work, and then I went on for my PhD in marriage and family therapy. And most of my counseling was more verbal, where I might give a parent an intervention, but it wasn't written down. It wasn't predetermined. We didn't do role plays. We didn't do troubleshooting. And I realized later in my career that I was setting my families up for failure, because how can I expect them to change their undercurrents or their dances with each other without something written down and predetermined? You're going to see Cynthia, the mom, act shocked because the 5 therapists that she had before that they defeated had never had anything like this. And the analogy I would use is sports teams. You would never see a sports team show up for spring training without a playbook, where all the players are handed a playbook that's written down, predetermined. They run dress rehearsal after dress rehearsal after dress rehearsal so that the quarterback can actually call out a number and everybody knows what their roles are, what to do. And so how is it that sports teams know this? And sometimes in mental health, we don't always do this as well. So this is why this helps increase the odds dramatically that you can take an impossible case and get it unstuck quickly. So let me show you this as we go on. So type in your chat bar the answer to this question. How many of you get this now what question? This is why this question alone is the reason why the playbook is so effective. So let me show you the question and then just type in yes or no if you guys get this kind of question in your trauma work. So here's the question. The now what question. A parent might say to you, or a couple, but let's take a parent as an example, as I said, okay, Dr. Sells, or Mary, or June, or whoever is on this webinar today, it helped to talk about our child's wounds and trauma. However, but now what? Scott or Dr. Sells. In fact, the more we talk about it, the worse we're starting to get. A great example is EMDR helps the client talk about the story without re-traumatizing. But many, many times clients are saying, now what? We want tools in the here and now to move forward instead of getting stuck in the past. So talking about the trauma helps with catharsis, and sometimes with some cases it can heal just by itself. But especially with stuck families, they are saying, okay, now what? So let me see, how many of you have ever experienced this one in your chat bar? Okay, so yes, Lauren, Renee, yes, Ruth, okay, Chad says yes, Kim, okay, Lucy. Okay, so we have a lot of people who have had the now what question. So if you have ever had the now what question, and then absolutely from Sally, this is the right webinar for you guys. Okay, so let's go and go through the now what question with the playbook. Okay, so here's the case. Dexter, it comes in with his family. He's 10 years old. He's started, I think the family said he started counseling as young as 4. Maybe it even was earlier. At this point, the opposition defiant has gone to more conduct type problems, disorder. Aggression is really, really high. In fact, before I came in as a consultant, he had just thrown down a playmate down a flight of stairs and broke the child's collarbone. The school problems are just out of control. They've gotten so bad that Dexter has a cubicle away from the other kids, and teachers are, and the school is actively trying to get Dexter out of the school. So there's a war going on between the parents and the school. There's huge attachment issues. I learned later, and one of the interventions of the playbook is around this issue, is that the mother had extreme postpartum depression and was really checked out for the first couple years of his life. And as we know from the research, personality is often formed in the first 3 years. That's why when I work a lot of times with adoptive kids from foreign countries like Russia or different areas, the parents are surprised, like, well, we got the child when they were like 1 or in the crib, and why are we experiencing all these issues? Because if you don't have attachment early on developmentally, it starts to impact the child really, really severe as they grow older. So this playbook is going to really have to deal with that issue. And with 8 years of stress, it starts to impact the marriage. The parents aren't on the same page, they're bickering, there's strife. They're not there for marital counseling, but you can see very early, especially in part 2 next week's webinar, you're going to see the mom flat out say, I like this playbook, Dr. Sells. However, my husband who's sitting right next to me will not step up to the plate. And all hell breaks loose when that happens. So you're going to start to see the tension points that this playbook starts to bring up. And for me, it's exciting now that I can deregulate myself and know it's coming. But it's a really interesting technique because it brings up these things. And then also you're going to see that the village was not engaged. You get this a lot from families that are burnt out. Oh, we've burnt the bridges of all our village. We have no one, or no one will come. And I think this is a really underutilized potential for us as clinicians, that we oftentimes don't bring in the extended family, and it's a tactical error. And I'm going to share with you a little bit why we do that and how we can overcome that. So if you're also wanting to engage the extended family at a higher rate, you're going to see in these next 2 webinars that this can be done really, really much easier than you think. So Michael's the therapist. Now, he graduated from the advanced training course, which I'll share with you a little bit later, and Terry, who's part of our team, she's going to be sharing with you a little bit about this as well. But Michael at this point is saying, Scott, I now know the techniques really, really well, but I want to onboard them better. And so you're going to see the video clip of me coming in as a consultant through Zoom, where I'm helping Michael onboard the techniques with his clients, and I'm kind of in a role of a coach for Michael. And so you'll get a chance to see Michael's reaction to my work with him. So let's talk about the undercurrent with this case. So here we have one of the techniques that you're not going to see today is called the seed tree diagram, where we draw for the family on a flip chart or a board or a PowerPoint slide, if we're doing online therapy, an apple tree. And we say to the family in previous sessions that you don't see here, that the problems on the surface are like on the apples of the tree. Those are what we call symptoms, and they're the weeds. Now, we say as an apple doctor, if the seeds were bruised or had worms in them or stressed out, if you pick the fruit and you don't get to the root, the fruit's going to grow back the same way. For families, they like visuals, experiential. So today you're going to see there's 4 seeds. I'm going to just share with you 2 of them. For this family, the top 2 seeds that they picked out with my help were that Dexter has a huge misuse of power seed and unhealed wounds. Now the DNA, or the secret sauce, is the undercurrent. This is the root system. This is feeding the seeds the toxins. So metaphorically, the seeds are bloated, overweight, and obese. They're getting fed by these unhealthy undercurrents, and we need chemotherapy, or in this case, the FST Trauma Playbook, to move from unhealthy to healthy. Let me show you what this looks like. So let's take misuse of power. Now there's these undercurrents that we've identified in our research that are key, that drive this unhealed wound seed. So it leads to an upside down hierarchy where right now Dexter is up here and the parents are down here, so Dexter controls the mood of the household. And the undercurrents are unhealthy where right now there's caustic communication, or what we call interactional trauma between parent and child, especially mom. There's nagging, there's criticism, it escalates to aggression. What the family doesn't have is soft talk, praise, and appreciation, and they need a trauma book to help them get there. Jay Haley, who founded Strategic Family Therapy, who was instrumental in this playbook idea, once said to me this powerful statement. He said to me, if the family could unstick themselves, they wouldn't be in your office. So what the family needs is someone like AAA. The car is stuck in a ditch, and the family calls AAA, and they don't want the AAA expert to look at the car and ask, how does the car feel? Although it's important to know that, they want somebody to help them out of the ditch and move forward, the now what question. And so this is going to be a challenge because this family has not had soft talk, praise, and appreciation for years. The other one is the mom says, I'm inconsistent, and so does Adam the dad. So they're going to have a playbook to help them be consistent, and the village is not mobilized. These parents are burnt out. That's why Alcoholics Anonymous can be so successful, because you have what's called a sponsor. They have villagers or extended family members that live right around them. Cynthia's father, Adam's grandparents, the uncles, but they firmly say these people won't engage. I say not so fast, okay? And the unhealed wounds, there's more than these undercurrents. I'm just showing you the main ones for this particular family. Huge anxiety for the boy, Dexter, the mom, the dad, the younger brother, Maxim, and so they need safety and security. So now that I know where to tap, I know that the symptoms that I've got to eliminate or reduce is disrespect, the equivalent of temper tantrums or acts or threats of aggression. I know that the top undercurrents that are causing these symptoms, or the drivers, are inconsistency, caustic communication, lack of support, and high anxiety. And I know that I've got to help the family as a consultant with Michael as a therapist to put in these missing healthy undercurrents. But the family's so fragile, burnt out, chaotic, and disorganized that I'm going to have to pick one at a time. I can't do all 4 undercurrents at once because the family will implode. They're too fragile. They're too brittle. So what I want to do is I want to look at what can I do as a quick victory? What's my low-hanging fruit? Because if I can get a victory with the first playbook out of the gate, or even if the family has to fake it till they make it, it has a chain reaction of confidence, hope, and from hope, I can move into deeper tissue work. So here's how this works. The learning moment I want you to apply is that when you watch the video, when you see the playbook mobilizing the village, chat in your chat bar, I see it. When you see the playbook injecting into the family safety and security, type in your chat bar, I see it. So just be aware that as I show the video, you're going to be part of the story. I want you to see what I see. So that when you go into your next session, your eyes are like more adjusted and you've got a new pair of glasses, okay? So the playbook is like an antidote, or I call it like an antibiotic or a Z-Pack. Families love these visuals because, and the analogy to the medical profession, they understand when they get sick and the doctor does blood work, he's looking or she's looking for undercurrents. They don't use that word, of course. And that the doctor has to know through the blood work what antibiotic is most appropriate for this particular undercurrent. If the doctor gives the wrong antidote, the patient or client could get worse. So this is why the undercurrents is like doing blood work. So Haley, in his book, Problem Solving Therapy, and I got the privilege and honor to be an apprentice with Jay Haley in the 90s before he died, and that resulted in my first book, Treating the Tough Adolescent. And we sat down one day, and he explained to me the idea of directives. Now, he didn't use the word playbook. That was something that we invented as a term through the book, but he used the word directive. And he said it is like an antibiotic. A directive will get your traumatized families unstuck with the smallest change possible. Now that caused a little bit of what's called cognitive dissonance for me, because I said to Jay, I go, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to unlearn some of what I learned. And he's like, what do you mean? He says, all these years of graduate school, I've been taught to be a non-directive therapist, that the way to change is through empathic listening, reflective questioning, and that the client has insight into the problem where they say, gee, Scott, I never thought of it that way, and that's changed from the inside out. Now you're saying that I could change a stuck system from the outside in. He's like, yeah, I know you're skeptical, but when a system is stuck, they do much better to go from the outside of the onion to the inside of the onion. And that's where the directive takes place. So it looks like an onion, going outside in instead of inside out. So I had to go from being a non-directive therapist to a directive therapist. Now that caused some stress, but it's been a game changer. So you're going to see in the video that one of the reasons why the client system that you're going to see is stuck, I believe, is because the previous treatment providers were more non-directive, and this family needed somebody to answer the now what question. Okay? So let's dive into this case. So in the book in chapter 8, when I'm trying to pick out a technique or what Haley calls a directive, I built with Ellen all the techniques of my career to inject the healthy undercurrents that I could go like the Top Chef recipe menu. It's one of the most popular chapters in the book where you could go and say, okay, what's the undercurrent I'm looking for? Security, forgiveness, unconditional love. What are the Top Chef recipes or antibiotics I can choose from? It's not amoxicillin, but it's strengthening family connections. So once I know the undercurrent, now I can look for what technique is going to be used to insert that missing undercurrent. Now, I don't list all of the techniques, and that's, of course, why I've gone to more of the coursework so that people who want to dig deeper can really have me as a coach to help them along and onboard these kind of techniques. So here's what it looks like. Some of the best ideas are the simplest. What we found is that families in our research love this. When you come into the session with a draft already prepared, not a blank piece of paper, where you say, who is going to be involved in the intervention? Villagers, extended family, children, caregiver. So who's going to be involved? Then what's the intervention's name that we're going to use? In this case, it's called Strengthening Family Connections. When is this intervention going to occur? Where is this intervention going to occur? And you'll see in a moment the how is also part of the playbook. So again, in the old days, I never gave anybody this piece of paper of who, what, when, where, and how. It was all verbal. And I wondered why they failed all the time. And this is one of the reasons I think why they did. So this is where it pivots to telemedicine. When you have a playbook, it's visual. And it starts to captivate the family. Like they're like, oh yeah, this is what I want, something to see, taste, and touch. It's like going to Mayo Clinic and people pay thousands of dollars because they want to know what's the right diagnosis and they want to know the cure, okay? And they'll pay thousands of dollars from Mayo Clinic to get that. So if you can captivate your family online or in person, but especially online, they're going to want to come back. They're going to want to see the storyline. And you use TED Talk visuals. If you have not watched TED Talks, you should look it up on Google, because TED Talk, and there's actually books on this, where the way to deliver a message is more visual, through pictures. Less is more. They have a great one called Death by PowerPoint. You got to watch that one. And so often when you go to a workshop, there's like people cram the PowerPoint slide with too much information. There's no pictures. There's no storyline. They take so long to get, to really get to the point. And so watch how this works here. Now here's the captivating storyline. The playbook also really works when you have the right reframe to tether your FST Trauma Playbook to a higher calling. WIMF, what's in it for me? Now the higher calling is always the healthy undercurrent. You say to the family or individual or couple, I'm giving you this playbook or antibiotic or antidote because we want to utilize it to put in the missing healthy undercurrent. And when the client says, oh yeah, and you say to the client, you help find the undercurrent with me in earlier sessions. Remember the C tree diagram? Remember how you found the undercurrents with me? Like, yeah, and I told you I was going to give you something to help, that it wasn't going to be by osmosis, and I want to show you what's in it for you. So I say to the parents, look at this spider. Again, a visual, a TED Talk. I said, you think the enemy is your son. You think he's mean-spirited. You've even said he's a bad seed, no offense. But the real enemy is these undercurrents. And the real enemy is the spider. The spider for Dexter is hidden amongst the cobwebs. You can't see it, but it's there lurking. And it's called shame. And we're going to need this playbook that I'm going to show you to inject unconditional love and practical tools to kill this spider. Now, if you end up taking the course, you'll see this case in its full, from beginning to end. And you don't see it today, but mom starts to weep because she connects to the postpartum depression. I say, do not blame yourself, Cynthia. We cannot change the past. The question is, how are we going to change the future? I say, here's what it looks like. Again, visual, captivate. Does your son have these false beliefs in his head? I am damaged. I will never be good enough. I am worthless. I do not deserve to be loved. And she starts really crying here, and so does Adam, and she says, yes. I said, that's the spider. Now the webs are depression, or the symptoms, isolation, withdrawal, hopelessness, worried, anxious mind, self-sabotage. Does Dexter have all those? And she says, yes. The client is now captivated online. Now the father is a pastor of a church. So anytime you can carry the storyline to fit what you're doing culturally with that family, it's going to engender more cooperation. And so I take a verse out of the Bible in 2 Corinthians and I say, Adam, you're a pastor. This spider's got to go. Our weapons are not according to what we see always. They're not the flesh, but they're divine power to demolish strongholds. And so this playbook is going to be our weapon. And man, you could see Adam just going, really? And so when you're attaching the story to captivate your client and I'm starting to see questions already, so great. So write them down as you see them so you don't forget, because we'll collect them at the end in the Q&A box. But this starts to move the family because now they can't wait for the playbook. Haley also taught me that before you give the playbook out, you give it to a higher calling, people can't wait to see what the playbook looks like, and they're more motivated. So here's what it looks like. So now I'm going to add this when you see the video. I want you to not only say, I see it when you see Mobilizing Village, or if you don't see it, don't put it in, safety and security, but I want to know if you start to see Kill the Spider. So the playbook is going to be contending for each one of these healthy undercurrents. So let me show you the playbook and then the video. So here's what the playbook looks like, and you can practice in your chat bar right now because you're going to see some of these healthy undercurrents. So the family gets a draft, and it says to help Dexter be at peace again through the power of hugs and prayer because of the family's dad being a minister, unconditional love and affirmation. And again, you're connecting it to the higher calling to heal wounds of shame, lack of attachment, and lack of safety and security. So in your chat bar, you could say, I see it. Okay, you can see right there, I'm going very public with the family that this is why we're doing this playbook. And together, we're going to overthrow these strongholds of shame. We're going to counter the lies with truth. The truth shall set you free. We're going to help Dexter know that he deserves to be loved, he has what it takes, and he's part of the family. Now, Maxim, he loves his younger brother. So we're going to have, with Dad's help, that he's going to write these on cue cards, and he's going to hold them up in the morning so that everybody doesn't forget. And we are going to kick this shame spider out on its butt. It's overstayed its welcome, and it must go. So this is the introduction to the playbook. This is the higher calling. Then when you get into the guts of the playbook, you have the who, you have dad, mom, Maxim, grandfather, uncle, and a neighbor. What is it? It's going to be a group home 30 seconds or more where Maxim holds up the cue cards. Do you see how roles are clarified now? If during the day, if anyone has stress or anxiety, Dad or anyone can call a hug outside of the regular times. When is it going to be? In the evening, and we have to determine this. So you bring this in and say, this is a working draft, everyone. We can change the wording, we can change the times, but when I used to do this and it was just a blank piece of paper and say, what do you guys think? They would look at me like deer in the headlights and like, I don't know. But having already a working draft helps the juices going really fast with the family. Where at home? So this tests my philosophy that people will do well if they can, but they lack the tools. And so when you start to give them the tools, they get energized and excited. Then the how is, Dad's going to get everyone up. They're going to kneel down on Dexter's level, because remember, he's 10. And there's going to be a long group hug. Now, in next week's webinar, you're going to see how this brings some of the junk to the surface. As I said earlier today, Mom's going to turn to Dad and say, this looks great in theory. However, I don't think my husband can do this. And then I'll show you what happens. But today, you're going to see part one, where you're going to see the family's initial reaction to it and then making changes to it. So let me give you a behind-the-scenes look into the course, because this is where the video is lodged. Every module has 3 lessons, and I'm going to show you lesson 3, where the family is helped to co-create this playbook together, and then each lesson has a worksheet. It's also translated in an audio version, because some people learn better by audio. And also this lesson is also video transcript, because some people learn by just reading. So whatever way you learn, this course is designed to help you learn this quickly with speed. So let me go to the video. So here's what you want to do as I show this, guys. I want you to type in as you see it. Mobilizing the village, I see it. Safety and security, I see it. Killing the spider, I see it. So let's go to the videotape, so to speak, as they say. I'll move this here. There you go. Okay, so here, this is the lesson you'll see. I'm working with Michael. And so I'm going to connect this, and then I'm going to show the video. So let's watch here as this unfolds. I'm focusing on security and safety. I want to get rid of these symptoms by getting to the root and not just the fruit or the weeds. So here, I give the mom and dad and village the playbook, and let's watch how I go ahead and do this. And I just go through it, and this is again not a blank piece of paper. I say it's a draft, and then in the second video you see how the family starts to tweak the playbook, and it goes from a draft to co-ownership of the playbook. So this is why we call this phase co-creating the FST Trauma Playbook. Let's watch. This would be something that would really help your son foster and attack this stronghold with chemotherapy. So we want your son to feel even more at peace. We want the parents to feel more at peace. So we want to overthrow these strongholds of shame with the truth. You know, that's why the truth shall set you free. We want to give him messages every day that you deserve to be loved, you have what it takes, you're part of this family and we love you. Any kind of abuse that you've had, whether it's real or contrived, is not who you are. You are beautiful, courageous, and you're a warrior. And you are not damaged. You are healing and you have what it takes. Now I know that Dexter loves his little brother, Maxim. So with Dad's help, he could write these on cue cards. And Dad could be in charge of organizing this task. And the message is it's time to kick this stronghold of shame from our home. It's overstayed its welcome, and this shame spider must go. So again, this would be an experiment. You would agree to do it for 2 weeks. It takes about 30 days to change a behavior. So if you don't want to go 30 days and just say, let's review it in 14 days, I'm okay with it. Sometimes we have to fake it till we make it. This is a grand experiment. So Dad, Mom, and Maxim would be involved in this. You would initiate a long group hug, 30 seconds or more, and you would say these things to Dexter. And Maxim would hold up the cue cards, and I could see how cute it would be for Maxim to say to his brother, yeah, you have what it takes, bro. You deserve to be loved. And if during the day he has anxiety or stress, you could call a group hug if you want to, or not, because this can be modified however you want to, or tweaked. It would be great if it was like bookends. Like we start the day with a hug, and we end the day with a hug. And Dad is the point person on this. Of course, this is at home. In the morning, you would get everybody together and go up to the bedroom, and you would hug him. Maxim would hold up the cue cards. Everyone would say the message is going to be a long group hug. And at first, Dexter might be like, come on, I don't need this. And you're like, that's okay. Kids don't always know what they need. We're doing this for ourselves just as much for you. And then in the evening, before you go to bed, so you got bookends, in the morning and the afternoon. Is this something that you guys would be willing to try for 30 days or at least 2 weeks? And do you want to make any changes in it, or do you like it, or do you want to put it on hold? So what you see here is two things. One is that the family gets the playbook online. They're kind of captivated by it. Mom takes ownership in saying that, I don't want to have the word that he's damaged. That's too overwhelming. But I do like you deserve to be loved and we're for you. So one thing you see is that the family starts to co-create the changes in the playbook. It enables clarification. It's predetermined and it's written. Michael, as the family therapist, likes it because he knows what to tap quickly, and that really helps as well in terms of helping the client and the therapist with clear direction as well. So did you guys see it? How many of you saw? Okay, so Sarah said, okay, so we got Leah saying, I see it. Okay, so you did start to see, especially in the first clip, that the family is getting the playbook that you see, and they're really starting to see the higher calling or the sacred journey. So as we go along, and I finish out today with questions, let me go back to my slides here. And the one thing you don't see yet is the village. That was kind of a little bit of a trick question because the village yet hasn't had to come in. They're sitting back observing this unfold. They're hoping that the parents will come up to the plate with this. But in next week's webinar, you'll see that they have to come in because the uncle comes in and saves the day because he helps the father because the father has not been a leader of the family in a long time. So, let's keep going. So the thing that I wanted you to also see is that this is a representation of directive therapy. You're equivalent of what's called a systems irritant. You're going to irritate the system in terms of deregulating it with the playbook. It may get worse before it gets better, and there may be a battle for structure. So either the playbook's going to go smooth, which is about 50% of the time. I'm giving you generalizations, of course. And about 50% of the time, the family is going to say, I don't know if we can do this playbook. I don't know if it's going to work. In this case, it was the latter because this was a chronically stuck case or impossible. Well, I got out of that battle by saying, what do we got to lose to experiment? Could you do, it takes an average of 30 days to change the behavior according to the research. She goes, and Adam goes, I'll give you 2 weeks. I say, I'll take your 2 weeks. Because what happens is that it works. And as it works, the family starts to get more and more confident, and we can go into deeper tissue issues later. So you'll see that I'm going to bring up, and I think I'm home free until the mom says we're not on the same page, and you'll see this next week. And so the two techniques to immediately use is a better online delivery and also unstick your impossible cases. I would like you guys, if you wouldn't mind, to just try it this week with your cases, where you'll get the PowerPoint slides and you can actually try the playbook and see how it works. So before we go into the open mic and questions, I've gotten over the last 2 years, it's almost like a 2-year anniversary, I've gotten 2 major themes that have come out that I want to share with you. The first theme is that out of these 12 core techniques, there has been 4 must-have trauma tools that people have told me over the last 2 years. And so I want to kind of get like the best of, like I like Journey, I guess I'm dating myself here, so I love the best of album. So in the next webinar next week that Terry's going to be talking about, you're going to see a highlight from the course, how to use a motivational phone call to really quickly engage your most resistant clients, especially the parents that say, just fix my kid, I don't want to be involved at all. And these questions, you'll see, really increase the odds dramatically, especially in the online environment we're in. You saw a little bit about the undercurrent. I'm going to match it with what's called a feedback loop to help the family see it. And the extended family was the 3rd most requested technique. And the playbooks, I'm going to, like I said before, show you part 2 where all hell breaks loose. So those were the top 4 that I want to highlight next week. Now, the other thing people have said to me is, what do I do? I want to go deeper. I've been doing these webinars, trying to learn them on my own through trial and error, but is there a way to, go deeper? I want to be able to go into a session because I'll tell you what, family therapy can scare me to death. I didn't really learn it in graduate school. I don't have the confidence when I go in. There's so much noise. People are, emotionally throwing up on each other. I don't have time to read your book, Scott. I don't have time to attend all these webinars. Is there a way that you could speed up the process for me and, really help me learn this quickly? And I said, okay, I went back to the drawing board. So I did a beta test, I had a founders group, and so I'm launching for the first time this course, because the other thing people told me, and I guess a picture's worth 1,000 words, is that I'm drinking from a fire hose today, and I love this quote, I'm drowning in information while starving for wisdom. So the other challenge I had was, how could I make something that you could consume easy, have fun with it, and have community, and me along the way with you as a coach. And so that's where the training course was born. And I'm launching it for the first time to the public after 1.5 years of beta testing it. And so I wanted to ask Terry to come on and share with you what the next steps were, so that you could maybe get a behind-the-scenes look of the course, but also those 4 trauma techniques. So Terry, if I could pass the ball to you.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Dr. Sells. And to those of you who don't know me, I'm Terry Turner, and I'm a proud member of the Family Trauma Institute team. I focus most of my time on marketing and trying to find out what you all want, and then how we can be responsive to your needs and meeting our mission to train you to be a family trauma expert. As Dr. Sells had said, this is a really, really exciting time for us. We are just thrilled, after all of the work and research, that we can announce that for the very first time, the FST Advanced Training course is going to be available. We're going to make it available to all of you in just a few weeks. However, but wait, there's more. Dr. Sells so much believes in experiential learning, and before we go to the advanced training course, he wants to be sure that you all can see and experience what it's like to use the 4 must-have trauma techniques. So as he mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, and then just told you, we're going to have another free webinar beginning next week that is going to be on the 4 must-have trauma tools that you need to build your practice and to build your confidence in working with traumatized families and couples. And we're making this webinar available 3 different times so that it can meet your schedule. Whether you want a morning or an afternoon or an evening, those times are going to be available. So as you can see on your screen right now, you can go sign up for that free webinar by going to 4, that's the number, traumatools.com, and be sure to sign up for the time that best meets you, your schedule, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening. And as Dr. Sells just told you, he's going to focus on the tools, the 4 must-have tools that he pointed out of the 12 techniques, as well as the timing and tips that you need to springboard your trauma practice forward. For the past 2 years, Dr. Sells has been offering these free webinars to you. And since that time, as Dr. Sells had just shown you, you've been telling us, whether it's through Facebook or emails, or even some direct calls that you've made, that you want to go deeper on learning the trauma techniques, and that it would be helpful if Dr. Sells could coach you through the challenges of working with traumatized couples and families. And so that's what we're going to make available to you. At the end of next week's free webinars, Dr. Sells is going to give you the opportunity to sign up for the FST Advanced Training course. And make sure that you have the support you need to improve your practice and your work with traumatized families. So right now, if you'd like to go and sign up for the free webinar that will show you the must-have tools, you can go to 4, that's the number as it shows on your screen, traumatools.com. And we're looking forward to seeing you and talking to you next week during those webinars. But before we go, Dr. Sells is going to address some of the questions that you've had and may want to go further about the FST playbooks. So Dr. Sells, take it away.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks. So I wanted to take a few minutes to answer some of your questions about, today's webinar, anything that you had, even if you also have any questions about the course. But Allison, what were some of the questions that people had today?
Well, to start out, there was a couple of questions that are related. And so one question was, you know, would the son, what happens if the son rejects the hug prescription or the hug, you know, technique? And then the follow-up question from someone else is, I'm imagining the son rejecting the whole plan before the parents can even finish presenting it because he is so used to being in charge and disrupting the family. So what do we do then?
Well, there's two things. As part of the course, another technique that is involved is, and I share with this on previous webinars as well, it's called the love language. We know using the love language, there's love languages around physical touch, words of affirmation, you know, languages like that. And we know from the mom and dad that Dexter's love language is hugs or physical touch. So the odds go dramatically up that if you find the child's love language and you match the playbook to the undercurrent and the love language, that your odds keep increasing because kids will do well if they can, and the aggression is connected to the shame, which is connected to not feeling loved and feeling damaged. And so Dexter does not reject it because also there's been role plays and practice and timing and delivery before it's done. It is a train wreck if the parents are given a playbook and the coach doesn't say, could we practice this? What are you going to do if, you know, Dexter's muscles go tight? Because his hug muscles are soaring out of practice, right? And so the dad comes in and says, well, can I just do this? Or can we just be around him? And so a lot of times systems are stuck in fear. And they have to, you know, with the role plays helping, they have to go for it. So you're going to be surprised that with the pre-planning, the devil's in the details, so to speak, that the odds increase that not only does it work, but you're knowing where to tap. So the playbook is not just like I used to give a grounding contract for every client I saw early in my career. It had no clear direction, and that's what increases the odds. The love language, the role plays, and it's on the right undercurrent. So great question on that. What's another one?
Another question is, does it or can playbooks address collective trauma on families from government policies? Just to clarify, like government church policies on assimilative tools, residential schools, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, that person who asked the question is thinking outside the box. And so good systems work cuts across micro, macro, and meso, I call it. Well, I don't call it that. It's in social work. And so I have utilized these playbooks to help healing communities. Worked as a professor at Savannah State University. And I worked in Midtown, and I assembled the community leaders, and we used a form of a playbook to clarify roles. And the first one was a march on a liquor store that was totally taking out the community. And then we also had playbooks on how to interface with the Mayor Floyd Adams at the time. And so one of the things that I'm excited about the course is because I get to be the personal coach. So if those questions come up, I have office hours every Friday. And as the founders will tell you, and some of them will be on next week's webinar, they loved being able to try the technique the next day and then have me available as their personal concierge on Fridays to onboard strategies just like this. Like, what about this? What would you do? How do you modify this technique for this setting? So great question, and the answer is yes. Next question.
Okay. How do you use this technique with children experiencing disorganized attachment and the parents' actions, responses are the source of the trauma?
Well, as we know, the key oftentimes is the parents. You have to go through the child because that's why they're there. And what you'll get a lot of later on as these playbooks work is the parents will say to you with a smile, you knew and I knew that you really wanted to change me in this process, right? But you kind of went through the back door to get to the front door. And I kind of say with a smile, yeah. You know, your child had all kinds of issues, and we had to change the dance because your child had done individual treatment. They had done well in individual treatment, but they had returned back to the same environment at home, and they were relapsing, right? And they're like, yeah. So that's why family trauma was a really good thing, because we're teaching the parents the timing, the delivery. Like for that kind of disorder that you just described, the parents don't know how to nurture because they have generational trauma. They don't know how to regulate their emotions. Nobody's taught them. So when you have a playbook that's written down with clarification of roles and a lot of role play practice, they feel really good about themselves because parents want to do well if they can, but they lack the tools. And as I said before, when I would give parents verbal instruction, it would fail, and they'd blame the treatment, or they'd blame me, and really I was at fault because I was sending them off to slaughter in a metaphoric way. So to answer your question, the juice, the mojo, is in the family, or the parents. Next question.
Someone was just not sure how shame was identified as the undercurrent.
Okay. So there's the cognitive aspect of undercurrents or thoughts, and then there's the interactional undercurrents as well, like the interaction of like nurturance, safety, security. So what happens is that in the course we do both. We do and I believe the best way to help a case is to integrate multiple approaches. So cognitive behavioral is really important on a case-by-case basis. So when you start to see a child that has had trauma and has anxiety, and the symptoms guide you towards the stronghold, then you have those in play. So it's both and. The safety and security was, hey, we're not leaving you alone. We love you. We're contending for you. You're not damaged. You're part of the family. That's security. That's unconditional love. But that's also going to attack the cognitive belief system, because then that creates a pattern interrupt where the child's like, wait a minute, I'm not damaged. I'm not worthless. My family does love me. So the undercurrents are both head and heart. And so that's where that comes from. Great question. Any other questions before we go today?
We have one last question, and this one comes from Lauren. Would any of these methods or language shift when working with a family on features of racial trauma?
Definitely. One of the founders of the course, Najee Muhad, said, you know, and one of the cases is actually part of the course where we had to change the language to fit, the culture. And he said, you are a Caucasian therapist. The family's probably not going to trust you, especially since, the father was shot by a police officer. But I believe, Scott, that the stress chart is going to work. And so he said, but you're going to have to use the word concern. So the African-American grandfather was like really upset. You'll hear on the video in the course where he's like, I don't have stress. If I say jump, that's the way I was raised, okay? And I said, but do you have concern? He says, now I like that word better. I like the word concern. And so the generational trauma and all of the abuse that AGA that occurred, both racial and non-racial, was brought up. So the model, I think the beauty in the model is that it was built upon working with families from all different races and cultures. They helped build the model where if you know the method of grounded theory or ethnographic research, it's a research method that engenders the clients to be part of creating the model. And so the flexibility in the model is there to adapt to the culture and the race and the gender and all of those things that are mixed in. But at the end of the day, the family wants competence. They want to see that there's a direction to the now what question. And Robin, the grandmother, said, you know, the game changer for me was when I could see a stress chart, I could see the problems broken down into bite-sized pieces, and I could get behind these undercurrents. I don't know if I would use that word, but I like that we have a clear plan of action. And so that really is what families are looking for today, as well as integrating the cultural issues, like I did with Adam, where I integrated scripture into the connection with the stronghold piece. So until I see you again, thank you for everything, and thank you for what you do with our families and how you help them. And so until next time, have a blessed day every day. A blessed day, everybody. Bye for now. Take care.